During this holiday season, I would like to take a minute to thank all of our listeners and guests for making this past year so special. Thanks to your continued support of the Deadhead Cannabis Show podcast and our advertisers, we can keep doing our part to normalize cannabis by sharing the uncensored truth with the world, along with some of the greatest music ever played. We are honored that you choose to spend time with us each week, and Rob, Dan, and I wish everyone a safe and healthy holiday season.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Deadhead Cannabis Show. I am Rob Hunt from Linnea Holdings down here in sunny Southern California. And let's just kick the show off today with the first clip.
Sitting here in limbo, waiting for the tide to flow. Sitting here in limbo, knowing that I have to go. Well, they're putting up resistance, but I know my faith will lead me on.
Well, as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Larry Mishkin in Chicago, Illinois of Michigan Law. And Larry, in context of everything that's happening on the Hill these days, why do you think I picked Sitting in Limbo to kick the show off?
Well, gee, Rob, if we're talking about marijuana, it could be so many things, right? But I'm sure that this has to be in reference to the fact that yet once again, our friends in the United States Senate have in fact left all of us sitting just a little bit in limbo if we find out whether or not we're ever going to get to take advantage of the Safe Banking Act.
That's exactly right. And I got to say, it was a huge blow, I think, to the industry last week when all of a sudden everyone was expecting that the National Defense Authorization Act language was going to come out and it was going to include the Safe Banking Act included within it. And once again, our good buddy Mitch McConnell took it upon himself to single-handedly kibosh this bill from its inclusion, saying that he has no interest in making sure that that language gets added to the National Defense Authorization Act, which I think leaves us with two more potential bites to the apple. Bite number one being, does it get attached to the Omnibus spending package that the language should come out a couple of days later? Or B, does it get through as a standalone bill, which as of right now, I think has 59 people that would support it, and it's one shy of the 60 threshold. So what do you think the chances are on this thing? We keep talking about, but is it dead? Is it live? How far in limbo are we?
Look, if Mitch McConnell is involved in the equation, then I would say that, we're always going to be slightly screwed one way or another. And the reason why Mitch is such a master of what he does, if you want to call it that, is even in his statements here in this article, right, where he talks about, well, this shouldn't become part of any other bill. This is the Democrats playing games and trying to stick stuff into important bills. This is the defense bill. How dare they hold this up with this last minute shenanigans for cannabis? They've had control of the Senate. Why don't they just walk this thing right through? Well, how do we take that apart, Mitch? The Safe Banking Act has always been attached to other bills or versions of it, to things like that, to other marijuana laws to try and get through that we've seen every year. But more importantly than that, the reason it didn't walk through the Senate is because every time the Democrats tried, Mitch McConnell got in the way. So, he's really the master of the doublespeak here and talking it truly out of both sides of his mouth. And I would just love to see them pick up that 60th vote and just vote it over his screaming dead body, because it would be great to pass it, and it would be great to see him get taken down at the same time. His opposition is pure politics and nothing more. And, enough already, Mitch. You've made your point. You've had your fun. But there's lots of people out there, lots of states out there that have spoken, and they're all saying, we want in on this, and you're going to have to get out of the way and let them get in on it in a safe and good business way.
Yeah, look, I'll add to the fact that, saying that the Dems have had control of the Senate for the last couple of years, yeah, that's true. But when it's a 59 vote or 60 vote threshold that's required and not a 51 vote threshold that's required, Having control of the Senate doesn't do it. The only way to actually pass something with a simple majority in the Senate, as we all know, is through reconciliation. And reconciliation only works in very specific cases where you can actually get it through reconciliation. So for him to say, you've had control of the Senate, yes, as far as a simple majority, that is true with Kamala Harris representing a tie-breaking vote. But it's certainly not true that they can get standalone bills through the Senate. And McConnell knows that. I think he thinks the American populace is too stupid to realize the distinction that things can pass on a simple majority the way they do in the House. So it's an absolute misnomer that this could have gotten through any other way. So now the question is, the omnibus spending package is next. McConnell certainly can't use that same rhetoric to say, okay, why are you tacking things onto to the budget bill? Because quite honestly, there's hundreds of bills that are tacked onto the omnibus spending package. It's a must-pass piece of legislation. Everybody knows it. And as a result, there's more pork added to that bill than any other bill we can think of. So do you think it gets through there? Or do you think that there's some chance that an 11th hour stymie happens again, much in the same way it did at the end of last year with the same bill?
Well, I think again that's going to be up to Mitch McConnell, and really what he wants to do here, and how he wants to try and play his hand. And it just, everything he does is so disingenuous and tied into the goals that he has, and the goals that he has is to maintain power. And when he makes statements like he makes here, what's bothersome to me is he takes a non-political issue and makes it political. And then for a lot of people, it becomes a question of, the Dems are just trying to shove this down our throats. The Dems are trying to do this. The Dems are trying to do that. And you want to say, hey, wait a second, guys. Many of you in your own states just approved marijuana too. So you can't just puppet the line that you're getting from Mitch McConnell on this Muppet would have worked too. And, you have to think for yourselves, folks. If you enjoy smoking marijuana, then you got to go call Mitch McConnell on the phone and say, Mitch, get the hell out of the way and stop being a roadblock. That's all you are. And, Mitch doesn't get it, but, he's irritating. He's like when you're smoking the joint, that one side doesn't burn down no matter what you do. It always just stays. That's Mitch McConnell. He just won't go away, and he ruins everything for everybody else.
Mitch McConnell is the canoe on your joint. That's what we're getting out of Larry Mishkin today. That's fantastic.
That's true. And I believe it. There's nothing you can do. You try and light it. Nope, it's not going away. Mitch McConnell he's a problem. And it all depends, right? On that morning or whenever they're going to vote on the omnibus bill spending package, if he walks in that day and says, I just don't think so, there's a good chance it's not going to happen. If he walks in and says, okay, fine, let them have their fun, then it gets through, but it doesn't do anybody any good because you just don't know what Mitch is going to do. And it's a little too much control over something so important, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, look, it's a good thing that on this date in 1977, 45 years ago today, the Garcia Band played in the University of Park in Pennsylvania and put a set list together that actually dovetails very nicely with kind of what we're dealing with politics today in the cannabis industry. So perhaps we listen to the second clip, and on the other side, you can tell me, Larry, why I picked this one.
Wonder how they blew it up, or if they burned it down. Get out, Mr. Lot. Don't you look around.
Well, I've always been a big fan of Gomorrah. It's a great Jerry tune. It's kind of slow and mournful a little bit. And in this case, boy, how many different directions could we go with this, right? You could take the position and say that really a lot of what's going on here is the Democrats' own doing. They're killing themselves. They're, in essence, they're blowing up their own town. They can't just get it right. And, even though I do think Mitch McConnell is a bit of a tool, there is some truth. Look, if you're the Democrats and you want to get this through, go out and find the people on the Republican side who represent states that have strong marijuana interests, figure out a way to get it done and get it done. I'm tired of Chuck Schumer saying it's a priority. Every time anybody asks him, he says, it's a priority. It's a priority. Well, it's a priority sounds good until you've heard it so many times, you realize it can't possibly be a priority anymore. So, now, on the other hand, just because I don't like Mitch McConnell, I think, it's also fair to say that, maybe this is like one of the Gomorrah is a story of, hedonism run amok, and, God's warning that, we all have to be good people and biblical people and whatever else, you want to say about it. And I'm sure that Mitch McConnell looks at all these marijuana smoking hippies out there, much the same way that Richard Nixon did when he decided to take it and slap a Schedule I ranking on it. And that's kind of been a mindset to some degree in the Republican Party ever since. Only the difference is we're 40 or 50 years removed, and now we have a large majority of Americans who approve of it. So Mitch has got to catch up.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go with just a ding, 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 ding. Give that man a cigar. You nailed that answer perfectly. And I love the fact that that you refer to it, at least as far as Gomorrah goes, as hedonism run amok. Gomorrah is absolutely hedonism run amok. And I think that politics in general, in many ways, is hedonism run amok, especially in today's day and age. And you're absolutely right that, hey, it could be the Republicans that blew it up, but it could be the Democrats that burned it down. So in this case, you've got no idea which is which, but we will see. I think in the next week we'll have a good idea. And, again, the public market's been waiting with bated breath now for how long? We finally saw a movement. We saw a lot of retail investors coming back into the market. We saw a lot of buying happening late last week and the early part of this week. Prices of almost every major U.S. cannabis issue were significantly up off their bottoms, like 10 to 20% off their bottoms from a few months ago, based on the fact that everyone has this belief that's going through. The larger analysts at the larger banks who actually have coverage on cannabis have been handicapping the passage of SAFE at 75% or so. Like Cowen put that out even again today, that they're still handicapping it at 75%. But I've said time and time again, as the resident cynic here, never underestimate the Dems' ability to blow it up or burn it down with their own bills. They can't get out of their own way, and if they can't get the 60th vote to put a standalone bill, then they shouldn't be out there, talking about it. If there's one thing I know about McConnell, is McConnell will never talk about a bill on the Republican side unless he already knows he's got the whip count done. If he doesn't have the whip count, he doesn't even mention it. Once he knows it's done, then he'll very slyly give that McConnell turtle grin of his and say, yeah, I think it's going to squeak through. He knows what the count is. He wouldn't say it if he didn't know. But Schumer's out there grandstanding without having the votes. And if you don't have the votes and you don't have the 100% support, stop talking about it, man. Just either get it done or shut up.
That's a good thought, though. When you say he turtle, you could have played Terrapin Station, too, and we would have been right on top of it. So,
well, we'll save that for another time of name this member of Congress and the member of Senate, and we'll play different songs and see if you can identify who the person is. Okay, but so
let's talk about what's really going on here, right? If McConnell's trying to sell it the way he's trying to sell it to the Republican Party, it's the same way that our good friend, what's her name from the White House, who was screaming about it, Kelly Conway, right? It's all with this suggestion. It's bad for you. You're going to overdose. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. And what do we hear more than anything else about that?
That ain't true.
Kids are going to start doing it.
Yeah,
right.
That's exactly right. So I got another clip for you on exactly this point today, because there's been some pretty good news coming out of one of the states. Now we'll see if you've been following the news. But I'm going to play a celebratory song, and here we go.
How sweet it is to be loved by you. How sweet it is to be loved by you.
So why did I play that one for you today, Larry?
Because we're loving our good friend over there in Connecticut, thanks to their lovely governor, Ned Lamont, who just said that about 44,000 eligible possession cases will be exonerated this year. And this is great. We saw Biden suggest that he was doing it on the federal level. Oh, wait, did I pick the wrong story here?
No, you're on it, man. That's exactly right. So when you know that your governor loves you like that and is going to let 44,000 you expunge your records, that's a pretty big deal. So one of those times where, again, Biden did something very similar at the federal level previously, but then at the end of making that announcement, he strongly advocated that governors in each of the individual states follow suit and do the same thing on a state level. And very few of them have said yes, but Lamont just did it. So it is not insignificant to see 44,000 people get their records expunged. What I would say is that any of those people that are looking to not have this follow them for the rest of their life as they go for applying for jobs or applying for other things, look, your record follows you your entire life. And I think a lot of people, when they get something happen to them when they're young, they don't realize that this is going to be something that's just an albatross for the remainder of their life if they're not able to get it expunged or sealed. So here we go, 44,000 young people, or 44,000 offenders in general, that no longer have this following them around. Wow, how sweet it is to be loved by Ned Lamont this week.
No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, I was just getting a little confused on the stories there, thanks to our good friend, the strain of the week, Mr. Nice. Highly recommend it. But this is great to see, right? We need the state governors. Pritzker's done it in Illinois. Pritzker didn't do it. The statute that was passed did it. But he supported it. And now we see it in Connecticut. And we have to start seeing this in other states, Democratic and Republican states, because there's just no reason in the world for anyone to be in jail for marijuana unless they were selling it to little kids, or they were engaged in violence of some sort, or they were selling stuff that was laced with something it shouldn't be laced with. Right? But otherwise, we need to move past this idea that the guy who sells marijuana is the equivalent of a guy, who's selling bombs or something, or who's selling, other types of toxins or poisons, whether it's, we want to call it heroin or cocaine or whatever. This is marijuana, folks. And, none of these people should be in jail probably, unless, of course, like I say, there's always exceptions. But it's so basic that, we should just take it for granted. But because it's not so basic, every time it happens, we do feel like that, that how sweet it is. Another state has turned, and, eventually there's going to be a few states left that haven't. And not that their leadership will ever change, but eventually the people of those states are going to say, why do we get arrested for marijuana and the folks over there don't? And then those states can decide what they want to do. But, we really have to move past this, like you say, where you get arrested, and if you're young enough, these days you carry it on your record forever potentially, and it can be a real game changer. Getting into school, getting a job, getting clearance to do anything,
getting a bank account,
anything at all that you would need to live a normal life, can be irrevocably damaged if in fact you wind up with a drug conviction on your record. And so this is absolutely the right way to go. In this case, we can go back and change history. We can go back and give people back their good name. For some people, it may have come too late, and that's unfortunate, but at least for the people who are still here or are still of an age when it really makes a difference to them, it's a huge gift, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Connecticut should be thanked for this. Lamont definitely should be praised for what he's done. And my real hope is that states around the country, but let's say even just start off with states in that part of the world, will want to emulate what Connecticut has done and send a message to the citizens of those states, especially if you're going to introduce adult use marijuana into your communities. How can you do that while at the same time keeping 44,000 people in jail for now doing what you're basically saying is legal and okay to do?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then, again, we're going to start seeing major differences in state law, not just in terms of legalization, but also in terms of how they handle people that were previously convicted. And part of that, of course, is social equity programs are coming into place, and some of that is partially just how you treat all people that have been convicted of drug crimes or nonviolent cannabis offenses, and making sure that they don't have that following around the rest of their life, which I think based on the sentiment of the country right now, they shouldn't. I mean, I think it's even more unfair. There's still people that are incarcerated for cannabis crimes in states that have since legalized. So, to be sitting in jail for something that's now legal, that's got to make you absolutely nuts. Sitting there incarcerated, knowing that you're incarcerated for something that other people are freely doing right now. So, it's time to take those retroactive steps and make sure that people are released or expunged, and all the other things that go along with the change in our law and a change in what's happening in the national psyche with relation to cannabis in general.
That's very true. And not even just on that level. I mean, one of the greatest ironies is that we've seen as all of the states adopt these marijuana programs, there's a certain number of people in each of these states who are probably eminently qualified to grow marijuana, and could probably do it as well or better than anybody, but they can't because they have a prior marijuana message or arrest on their record. My great friend here in the Midwest, Mr. BS, who we'll bring on one day maybe to talk about his experiences. This guy grew the best bud in northern Illinois and the southern part of Wisconsin for years. That's all anybody wanted. And then he got a little careless, and the Greene County, Wisconsin deputies stepped in and took him off to jail. And thank God at the end of the day, the feds prevailed, and he didn't get stuck with what would have been a horrendous sentence, much to the chagrin of the folks in Greene County, Wisconsin. But that's their loss, not ours. But now he carries this conviction, and he could probably grow marijuana better than anybody we've got growing in this state. But thanks to the laws and the rules and the prior convictions as a disqualifying condition, he's basically locked out. Now, he can apply after a certain amount of time maybe to get back in, but he's an older gentleman and doesn't have the benefit of a whole lot of time to be waiting around for that kind of stuff to happen. So we just need to remove all of that. If you know how to grow marijuana, you're the guy who should be growing the marijuana, not the guy who knows how to make the money. Let him make the money, you grow the marijuana, and everybody will be happy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, 100%. Shifting gears here just a little bit, Larry, let's talk about this Garcia Band lineup in late 77. To me, it's one of the golden ages. The 77, 78 Garcia Band lineups were absolutely my favorite. But, as I said, this show is from December of 1977, so 45 years ago today. Obviously, it's Garcia on guitar and John Kahn on bass, as is always the case with Garcia Band. But we also have both Keith and Donna playing in the band, both Keith as a piano player and Donna as vocals. But the great thing about this one is that it's also Maria Mulder, who was back and forth with the Garcia Band for a period of time. She was certainly there during what I think was the best period of Garcia, the midway through about 1978 or March 1978, which we've covered before. But the drummer is also kind of a random one during this period, which is Buzz Buchanan. So not a name that even like serious Deadheads ever talk about. Like I don't hear anyone go up to me and go, "Man, Buzz Buchanan, that guy was an amazing drummer." But he was holding it down. Everyone thinks about David Kemper as a drummer for the Garcia Band, or Ron Tutt, or a couple others that are escaping me right now. But never Kreutzmann for a while playing drums. But Buzz Buchanan was the guy who was holding it down for this show. And if you get the chance, it's obviously a little harder to find Garcia Band shows out there. But the one that I'm playing from December 11th, 1977, actually has a great video on YouTube that you can go out and check out. So if you're sitting around not doing much and you've enjoyed the music so far today, or even if you are doing something, throw in those headphones, and keep working or go for a run, but throw in a little JGB today, because it is always a good time.
Yeah, I think that's true. And, if you can do the very subtle and, indiscreet music listening at work, that's a good thing. And, look, eventually we're going to be able to do all of this, in private and listen to our music, smoke our weed, get our work done. We're just not there yet. So, in the meantime, we have to be careful and, be aware of who's around us and what's going on. But what a great band. And the thing about Garcia is right. John Kahn is the constant all the way through. Ultimately, he really was lucky enough to play with a couple of great keyboard players in his time, a whole number of them, even though Melvin Seals ultimately, of course, becomes the man at the very end. And, he's there for a good number of years and, really holds down the fort in his own way. Who am I thinking of from Keystone?
Ozzy Allers.
Ozzy Allers we talked about, right, yes.
Oh, you think of Merle.
Right.
Well, Merle was never Garcia Band. Merle was predating Garcia Band, and when that was just Garcia and Merle. And then once the band was formed, then he went through a handful of different people, including Keith Gottschalk, including Ozzy Allers, who you and I love for, if nothing else, just for that Positively 4th Street by itself. Yes, he was worth the price of admission. But yeah, Melvin being the person that for the majority of the time, I think from 1980 on, it was Melvin, which is pretty good longevity for a Garcia Band. But also Nicky Hopkins was the other one we've also talked about. Nicky was the original Garcia Band keyboard player. Absolutely, but there was just this bond between Jerry and John Kahn. What I always liked about John Kahn was he was the first guy I ever saw who played the bass guitar that didn't have the
the tuners at the top.
The fretless bass.
Right. The fretless bass.
Yeah.
Never seen that before until I saw him toting it around up there. And, he was Jerry's buddy on the stage and off the stage, and maybe off the stage a little too much his buddy. But they did make beautiful music together and made a lot of us happy for a very long time.
Yeah, no doubt. But, there have also been some other great drummers that play Grateful Dead music. And I think the one that comes to mind today is our good friend Joe Russo. And I understand you got a chance to go see Joe and the rest of his band just recently, which includes Tom Hamilton, one of my favorite guitar players to play Garcia music. So how was J-Rad?
J-Rad was great. Just great. And what I really admire about J-Rad, it's not just that they play the songs, it's how they play the songs, right? They really bring it. I mean, they bring an energy and a power that we can all agree Dead and Company just doesn't have. And they bring beautiful voices, which we can all agree Phil Lesh doesn't have. And they bring along some awesome, amazing guitar playing, which both Dead and Co. and Phil, whoever he's playing with, does typically have. But as you just said, Tom is really he's really something else when he gets going on that guitar of his right there. And of course with Marco Benevenuto and all of them, it's great music, and everybody was so excited to see them. The Friday show, anytime you start a 3-night set, you open with Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. In, I think it was 92 or 93, the summer of 92 or 93 at Soldier Field, the Dead played Good Morning Little Schoolgirl. And it was the only time I ever heard them play it. And it was great afterwards. I heard it, and I remember going home and probably calling Alex or Larry, one of our Larry Michigan Deadhead buddies who have been on the show with us, to say, hey, do they ever play Good Morning Little Schoolgirl? Oh, no. Oh, my God. You heard that. And it was great. And it was great to come in and hear these guys do it. A first set, Scarlet leaving the fire hanging out there somewhere. Great Dylan Silvio cover. And then into I Know You Writer. Why not be a little irreverent, Second set, they did a great Long Black Veil cover, which I always assumed was the band, but it's really Lefty Frizzell, who I didn't know and still don't really know very well, but I was able to look him up. Then they did a Cassidy. Then they came back to Fire, Unestimated, Space, and then closed with a full Terrapin and a great Dylan encore. Tonight I'll Be Staying Here With You, which was great, but very short to my surprise. Only about 3.5 minutes. They didn't really jam it out. And every night the ticket time said 9:00, and they started between 9 and 9:15 every night and played till about 12:15 or 12:30 every night with a relatively short encore, relatively short set break. Now I missed the Saturday show, and I missed the Saturday show because I had to stay home and watch Michigan play for the Big Ten title. And I love the Grateful Dead, but I love Michigan too. And when they're playing for a championship or a title game, I got to be there to see it. So my son went with my wife on Saturday, and it was frustrating on Saturday night because we always go to Setlist FM to .fm or whatever it is to get our set lists. And for some reason, Saturday night, they weren't posting the songs from the show, and they didn't until after my wife had gotten home. But by that point, I already heard, may have been the show of the year, which typically happens when I have tickets and don't go. But Let Me Sing Your Blues Away, Eyes, Dancing in the Street, and The Music Never Stops. So that's 4 songs in the first set, which apparently were just completely jammed out. Second set, opening with Shakedown, St. Stephen, and the 11. And that's when I really cried, because covers are great and other songs are fun, but I go to see J-Rad to hear them play the 11. Nobody plays it like they do, and it's just amazing. And I was really bummed that I missed that. And then, boom, right into Garcia for Cats Under the Stars. And then they start moving with the fun covers. Locomotive Breath, which my wife knew was a Jethro Tull song, but couldn't remember which album. And my son thought he had a vague memory of having heard it, and then came back and listened to it nonstop. Into the other one, and then a Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And Tom really shines on that. So if you guys have a chance to go check that out, I would. And then the traditional One More Saturday Night, but just a solid show, and no doubt probably the highlight of the weekend for the people who were there all 3 nights, excuse me. But then on the 4th, we really got a great show. And I'll just say really quickly, Rob, that I did have a chance to catch up with longtime listener and guest on our show, Dave Ellison from Scarlet Fire in Toronto. It was nice to catch up with him and meet his friends and catch the show together and have a chance to talk. And he's a nerd, dude. He knows as much as we do. But the Sunday was a Lost Sailor, Help on the Way, Slipknot, and then they just dropped the Franklins, went to playing in the band. A great If I Had the World to Give and Truckin', and we're all wondering what happened to Franklin's. Second set was a row Jimmy Cumberland, and then Vaseline, which I will confess I didn't recognize the tune. And the gal sat next to us said it was a Alice in Chains tune. And when I went to look under Alice in Chains and couldn't find it, I got nervous. But eventually somebody clued us in that it was the Stone Temple Pilots. And it's a great, great song. Cumberland, Let It Grow, the Sunday Night Samson, beautiful New Speedway Boogie, awesome bird song. And then for me, the highlight cover of the weekend, they closed it all with Born to Run. And really blasted it out. So bottom line is that J-Rad is big excitement, great fun. If you're looking to hear the Grateful Dead and you can't hear the Grateful Dead, go hear J-Rad. You want to see Phil and the quintet and all of that for old time's sake, that's a great call. Bobby and Wolf Brothers announced their tour for this fall and winter. That's a great show, but nothing's like J-Rad. They just fire on all cylinders, and it was a great weekend.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so happy you got out there to see him. I'm glad you caught at least 2 of the 3. So you can't be too upset when you miss one. You still get 2/3 of the offering. So super stoked you got to check it out. And I keep looking at my calendar and thinking, oh, I gotta go catch that, and only to realize, oh no, I can't because I've got some other pre-existing commitment. For instance, on April 29th of next year, Goose is finally playing in San Diego, and I'm at a wedding in Las Vegas. So it never fails. Like every time I think I get to catch something that I'd like to go check out, something else comes up. So such is life. But again, I live vicariously through my good buddy Larry MIshkin, who still sees more music today than I have at almost any period of my life. So keep doing it for all of us, Larry.
Look, what can I tell you? It's great fun. Goose is coming here. Billy Strings is finally coming here in the spring. So, we're already running out and trying to get our tickets for that. And Goose is going to play at the new Salt Shed, which is this great little piece of property right off the highway that used to be a Morton salt manufacturing facility. And now they private developers have bought it and built a stage there. I haven't been there yet, but we will be there next spring to see Goose. And so that'll be a lot of fun too. Listen, dude, you came to Chicago and we caught live music, right? So, come back and we'll go see some more live music. It's always good stuff out there to be seen.
That works for me.
Get Dan in too.
I guess Dan can come. Yeah. Dan, you're in too.
Yeah.
So one other piece of cannabis news we haven't covered yet is, I don't know if you saw the article that came out in Marijuana Moment that talks about the federally funded study that shows that marijuana legalization is not associated with increased teen use. So I gotta say that's some pretty good news, because there's all that hype about whether or not cannabis is dangerous to the developing mind, or whether or not we're seeing more use as a result of legalization. But there's been a lot of hype recently on the negative side of this. We've covered some of it on the show, but here we go with the study that's actually funded by the feds to take a look at this, and it came back in a very positive way. It
did, and here's what's so amazing about it. I don't know what year their book was published. If marijuana is safer, so why are we driving people to drink? But late Steve Fox, Paul Armentano, and our good friend Mason Tavert, who was on the show not too long ago, wrote this book, and I say it's the one I take with me everywhere, because anytime somebody wants to give you some bullshit made up fact about marijuana, you can pull this out and immediately debunk it with citations and everything. And one of the first normal legal conferences that I went to in Aspen a few years back, when Paul got up and spoke and presented this book, the ones that he said has so many statistics, and most of them just made sense, right? That if you're high, you're probably a safer driver than if you're drunk. If you're high, you're probably less likely to go out and commit an act of violence than if you're drunk. But the one fact that he gave us that I couldn't believe was the one that said that in states that have passed marijuana laws, medical or adult use, the instances of teenage smoking have not gone up, and in some cases they've gone down. And that's one of the reasons why I bought the book, because I had to go check out all of these sources and see. Now, one could easily argue at the time, and many people did, well, these are, guys who are marijuana centric in their thinking. So of course they're going to come up with studies that say this, but that can't possibly be true, because if kids are smoking it now and it's illegal, once it's legal, how much easier will it be for them to get their hands on it? They're all going to be smoking. Well, guess what? The government did a study, and they found that Stephen, Paul, and Mason had it right 10 years ago. At least the sources that they were citing had it right. And it's nice to hear the government finally say it, but it's also interesting to note that it's not getting a lot of play anywhere. We're not seeing it on the evening news. Kellyanne Conway is not coming back and saying, well, forget everything I said before. The government has now told us that I was a dumb, stupid idiot and didn't know what I was talking about. Right? I mean, this is a good thing. And, ironically, of course, there's always going to be people who don't believe the government. But I think there was some real concern that anytime you have the government involved, how do you know they're not going to manipulate the data or just come out with a conclusion that's not even supported by the data, but is consistent with the line they're trying to take. So, for the federal government to come out and say with a study that, look, we've looked into this and we can't correlate legal marijuana with any increase in teenage smoking is amazing. It's just fantastic. And, I hope that people will now listen to this and take this to heart. And, before you go making arguments about not wanting marijuana in my community because I don't want my kids to start smoking, if they already are, they already are, but they're not going to start just because of this, at least in most cases. And so, it would be nice if one by one we can kind of put these rumors and these myths to bed, and just finally be able to focus on what we're really dealing with, and then thereby find a way to be able to make it more accessible to the public, and and to be used in ways that are respectful of the people who want to use it, but also respectful of the people who don't.
Yeah, 100% agree. And again, I think the big difference between what we saw in the 1970s and what we're seeing today is that had the study come out in the 1970s, it would have been immediately suppressed. So the fact that we're getting information on studies that come out that are speaking positively or at least not negatively about cannabis, and the government's actually releasing them for our consumption, speaks very, very well about kind of where we are with the subject matter. Because it used to be that anytime they commissioned a study that came back that didn't say what they were hoping it would, somehow it never saw the light of day. So we're making progress on that side. Now, again, I think Freedom of Information Act requests certainly help with that, and it's hard to put things out that then you keep in the dark, or at least commission something that is kept in the dark. There's just too much media out there. There's too many people that'll leak things to the media. But it is nice that this one has come out and that this one now is widely disseminated. To that, as you said, you can cite in any time. I get these emails from my school all the time of, like, come in for a seminar about the dangers of cannabis use, for youth. I can't tell you how many times, like I was getting all these, things blowing up my email going into Halloween about rainbow fentanyl, how it's going to be given out like candy to children. I kept writing back going like, who the hell is giving you this information? You guys are crazy if you think that people are passing out rainbow fentanyl to children. Like, are you still buying into these urban legends, you idiots? And obviously, I've got to be careful because my wife is on the parent-teacher, PTO for the school. So I don't want to be, the person that's got the reputation of, being the loud guy that's trying to quash any sort of disinformation that comes out about drugs. But at the same time, I feel it's my duty and responsibility to say if I know differently and I can accurately point to something, I would rather provide the proper information. So when I've actually got a government study where I go, really, guys, you think I'm wrong? Don't listen to me. Here's the feds telling you the same thing. And I think it's important that information get out. And I think it's important, like when I'm very, very free with discussing cannabis now in front of other parents of children who have kids in the same class I do. And they say, what do you do for a living? And I explain what it is I do. And I talk about, the industry. And when they go, well, aren't you worried about your children? No, I'm not. And let me explain why. No more so than I am about them trying other substances. But, between this one and that one and that one and that one, I'm a heck of a lot more comfortable with them trying cannabis. And by the way, do I think that there's like issues with abuse? I think you can abuse any substance. I think you can abuse, I'm probably the biggest abuser of staring at a screen every day. That's not a healthy thing. I'm addicted to Twitter. Like there's addictions outside of substance addictions that are equally as detrimental to relationships and to health and everything else. So, all things in life in moderation. And if you have a problem with any of it, then figure out a way to wean yourself off or seek help. And I don't think cannabis is any different. But here, I really like something coming out that can put the minds of other parents at ease about what they can expect with wider proliferation of cannabis in broader society. And I think it's important that they understand that.
I think you're right. And what I'm very curious about now is these people who are knee-jerk anti-marijuana and have been looking, to the government to protect them from it. How are they going to respond to these studies? Are they going to accept these studies, or are they going to be the ones to say, oh, these studies must have been funded by the cannabis industry. There's no way this can be right. This must be wrong. But look, you say to friends of your kids, I'll tell you what I say to the parents of my son's friends. it's all about modeling, right? We've talked about this. It's why in France you don't have a lot of alcoholics, even though everybody drinks wine with their meals, because when you do it on a regular basis and it's modeled for children in a manner that doesn't suggest, Yahoo, we're going to go out and get hammered every time we open a bottle of wine. By the same token, every time you light a joint doesn't mean, you're going to get, shit-faced and, stumble over to the 7-Eleven and try and, shoplift 2 packages of Twinkies, right? It's just, it doesn't work that way, but people aren't willing to accept that. And it's important, I think, for adults to model behavior for children in a number of areas. And, not to say that the children should start smoking at a younger age. They shouldn't. But, that's when they can be impressionable. And so we can either, pretend that it doesn't happen, even though it does, and send them out into the world, with no idea what they're getting into, or we can demonstrate activity that they are going to see and have to deal with it sometime. But by the same token, doing it in a way, again, that demonstrates what it's for, and that it's not just for, how many brain cells can I kill in one individual sitting, and how many Big Macs can I shove in my mouth after that. And, look, it's like anything else in life. Some people are good parents. Some people aren't good parents. Sometimes you're a good parent and the message isn't picked up by the kid. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing and the kid turns out to be great. But I think that at the end of the day, we can all agree, and we just have to keep going back to this every now and then. Neither you nor I nor anybody in this industry that I know or that I've ever heard of has ever advocated that everyone should smoke, that we should be okay to have drivers who are stoned driving, any of this kind of stuff. People in the industry are not pushing for bad behavior. They're not pushing to break the rules. In fact, people in the industry are the ones pushing hardest to maintain the rules, because we're the ones that know how fragile the relationship with the federal government is. And if we ever want to have any hope of getting national legalization, there has to be some effort on the part of the industry to demonstrate that it is a legitimate industry. It's not just a frat house party, and that, we do very much care about the rules, and we're very insistent on who can and cannot buy our products.
Absolutely. Well, fun to have an episode again, kind of going back to being straight politics. Not too often that we get to look at what's happening politically and say, let's just go after that. Some days, as we say, it's a Grateful Dead show. Some days it's a Garcia Band, centric show. Sometimes it's a politics-centric show, and sometimes it's a business-related show, and sometimes it's a little bit of all. But lots of fun to cover JGB once in a while, and I still think we're going to get to the strain episode that we've been talking about, and I still think we're going to get to a JRAD episode here that we've been talking about. So, and again, if there's people out there that have suggestions for us, if you've got our business card or you've got information on how to reach us, send out some suggestions. Larry and I are always interested in hearing, what you guys want to listen to, and what we can pontificate over, and whether or not what we say matches kind of what you're thinking. We can't promise, but we can certainly try to cover the subject matter. Look, on my side over here, not too much more to say this week, Larry. Outside of politics is never easy to predict. And so, as our outro, I'll play a little something out, but I'll let you say goodbye first, and then I'll set up the final clip. And again, thanks to our producer, Dan Humiston.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Another great show. I do enjoy talking policy. I'm obviously very opinionated on it when it comes to marijuana, which my wife is always very quick to point out. But this is the time to be opinionated on our show. And we will never apologize or hold back on our positions. And people who know us understand, and people who don't. So it doesn't matter. But at any rate, thanks for putting a fun one together, and finding enough issues that we could agree upon this week, because I'm still kind of smarting from Diddy last week. Boy, I really got to go back and work on that, man. I'll tell you. I was like, wow, holy cow.
I'm guessing your son called you and go, hey, Daddy's right,
All 3 of them. Thank you. Yes. It was one of those reckoning moments, and I thought, okay, next time I'm going to check first. So, but this was much, much better, so I like that. But thank you. Thanks to Dan Humiston again, as always. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have fun, be safe, and enjoy your cannabis responsibly.
And as a final outro here, just a little bit more about what you can expect in politics in general when it comes to cannabis. Taken again one more time from December 11th, 1977, from Pennsylvania, little JGB to kick out the end of the show. Until next time.
Blame it on a simple twist of fate. Oh, blame it on a simple twist of fate.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to PodConx.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Hi, it's Justin Benton, host of the Miracle Plant Podcast, where we discuss this miracle plant that goes by so many names and how it's helping people in so many extraordinary ways. So if you love this plant and you want to hear a story that tugs on those heartstrings and learn more about this plant, then head on over to the Miracle Plant Podcast. You'll be glad you did.